these boilers, if you use an unmanned aircraft, you can save a utility company somewhere between $15,000 to $50,000 per inspection of a boiler.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 114. Can drones really provide an economic benefit in the energy sector? Well, if you ask today's guest, he would point to actual use case savings to show that they can. Matt Dunlevy is the president and founder of SkySkopes, an unmanned aircraft systems flight operations company based in Grand Forks, North Dakota. SkySkopes offers infrastructure inspections for the energy industry, using high-fidelity imaging services on drones. Matt is here to talk about SkySkopes, the benefit of using drones to inspect energy infrastructure, and the lessons learned in creating a drone-based energy services company. Now, before we hear from Matt, don't forget to support the Drone Radio Show by donating via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Drone Radio Show. Thanks for your support. And now, let's gain some insights into how drones are used in the energy sector with Matt Dunlevy of SkySkopes. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Matt to introduce himself.
So my name is Matt Dunlevy. I'm the president and CEO of SkySkopes. And fundamentally speaking, SkySkopes is a professional drone flight operator focused on bringing innovative solutions to the energy industry.
So Matt, when you say innovative solutions to the energy industry, what kind of solutions are you talking about?
It's innovative solutions based on new methods of, say, inspection that small UAS, at the time it's small UAS, can bring in the form of data, valuable, actionable data to the end users in the energy industry, which for us is referring specifically to utility companies and oil and gas companies.
And you're located in North Dakota.
Absolutely. We're headquartered in Grand Forks, North Dakota, which is one of the capitals of UAS in the United States. North Dakota itself has been referred to in the New York Times and elsewhere as the Silicon Valley of drones. So location, location, location is the old adage in business. And it was actually just by sheer luck that, we were in North Dakota and in Grand Forks when we noticed that there was an abject lack and a void of other professional UAS flight operators in our city and in our state.
How long has the company been around?
So we founded the company in October of 2014 and realized immediately, as we wanted to be a UAS flight operator, that we wouldn't be able to legally do it until we went through the proper federal procedures. And it was on the 6th of June of 2015 that we received the first 333 exemption for commercial UAS operations in the state of North Dakota for a startup.
Did you create the company with the intention of serving the energy industry from the start, or did that come later?
Well, I've always had a passion for all things aviation, which was, this was just something that we were seeing the prevailing winds of opportunity blowing in the direction of UAS. And, these things they're compelling and they're easy to subscribe to and get into. And my first thought getting into UAS flight operations was actually as almost, I would say, trivial as wanting to just fly UAS at weddings. That was the first thing that really convinced me that there was a market for UAS, and even as simple as just cinematography that you wouldn't want to contract a full manned helicopter to do. And then realizing, after fleshing out what the competitive advantages of using a UAS at a wedding or elsewhere in cinematography would be, and seeing stiff competition in that market from all directions and even other industries, we saw that the industrial applications for UAS where the real uses for a company such as ours would be is in the energy sector, specifically with transmission and distribution lines, power lines, oil and gas pipelines, and other infrastructural inspections.
So what did you have to know or learn before you could begin serving that market?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, we would have to learn what we needed to learn, then we'd have to go learn it because of the fledgling nature of this industry and because of the fact that there's a lot of languages that we don't speak that we would need to bridge the gap to before we can actually go and convince, say, engineers who have been in the utility industry their entire lives. We'd have to go and convince them that we can save them money, we can bring new value to their everyday operations.
How difficult was that?
It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, the only thing that never changes is that there is change. But it's difficult to convince people that when they've made their entire careers on whatever they've been doing in traditional methods without UAS. But once we can convince them that there is money to be saved using unmanned aircraft and there's new value to be gained, then, the doors start opening and the eyes start opening. We have to sometimes put on the hat of an engineer. We have some engineers in the company. We work with a lot of engineering firms to help us go to speak with utility companies and their engineering departments. And then once they're convinced, then they go and speak with the decision makers about getting flight contracts and flight operations going for their assets. But we had to, of course, get all of the regulatory permissions. We had to get the right assets in terms of unmanned aircraft and the sensors. And then we had to bring those assets. We had to prove that out. We'd have to show that the data would also be useful. And then we'd also have to put it in a palatable manner to the people who would go and speak with their decision makers to get these things going. So it's an interesting process from the regulatory standpoint, 333 and then 107 and insurance. And then it's also an interesting, if not somewhat also difficult procedure to go through contract cycles with major companies. But that's what we see as the real opportunity for a flight operator such as ours.
Can you pinpoint a couple of events that made you feel confident that you were finally on the right track?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the first time we were able to bring in some UAS degree seekers and degree holders from the University of North Dakota. So we're partnered with UND and we're co-located with UND. And when we started gaining attention from their graduates of their UAS program, and they wanted to come work for SkySkopes because they're flying these unique missions, that's when we realized that, we actually can provide these new potential pilots with missions that otherwise they wouldn't be able to go do. And that's when I'm happy that we're not doing cinematography. We're actually going and doing industrial applications because that's where we would put the talents of these pilots to best use. So bringing in the new pilots, and then back on the 29th of August of 2016, when Part 107 came out, we went out to fly the nuclear-powered power lines outside Fargo, North Dakota, with our partner Sharper Shape, which is the global market leader for automated UAS-based asset inspections. We're their operator for the United States. And we also flew with, XL Energy, a major utility, all under the supervision of the Federal Aviation Administration after we were the first in North Dakota to go out and get Part 107 certificates for our pilots. It was great because we finally had these new aircraft that weren't permitted under the big list for 333 exemptions. And under Part 107, we knew that this new heavy lift and reliable aircraft was going to be able to put some of the most advanced sensors in the world up in the air to bring new data all in concert to a major utility such as Excel. And when we landed and when we were done with the mission, we spoke with the FAA representative that was there, and he mentioned to us that everything was executed very well. And we were happy to hear about that. And that was one of those defining moments, I'd say, when we got to fly the Sharper A6 with what I would characterize as a super payload suite.
Have you been able to quantify the cost benefits of using drones to do inspections?
My favorite example for utility companies is in their internal boilers. And, there's this one extremely innovative company out in Traverse City, Michigan called Interactive Aerial. And they make an aircraft called the Legacy One. They're also a partner company of ours. And their president, Christian Smith, graduated out of the aerospace program at the University of North Dakota. So there's some interesting educational ties there too. But they fly their small octocopter in GPS denied environments, but it can still get altitude and position hold because of the LiDAR sensors and the other sensors that they've got on their aircraft. And when you fly indoors, it takes a lot more skill unless you're using an aircraft such as theirs that makes flying so much more easily executed. These boilers, if you use an unmanned aircraft, you can save a utility company somewhere between $15,000 to $50,000 per inspection of a boiler. And otherwise, these utility companies have to put together scaffolding and they have to put people up on the scaffolds. There's risk to that. There's time to put scaffolds up to get up and get the exact same data, if not lesser quality data than what we would be flying with, say, the Legacy One aircraft or other aircraft inside of a boiler. Like, that's the defining statistic, at least, that we see, is flying indoors in a boiler will save almost the cost of an actual aircraft per flight.
That's pretty significant. Now, how will flying beyond visual line of sight affect inspections?
Oh, beyond visual line of sight is without a doubt the silver bullet in what's going to be its first iterations, and as a permission develops, it's the defining factor for our industry. And that's why we're lucky to be co-located and partnered with educational institutions such as the University of North Dakota, because when they crank out pilots, these aren't just some of the most highly educated because this was the first baccalaureate UAS program in the country. They're also required to get their private pilot licenses under Part 61. And not just get your check rides and go. They're also going through a rigorous undergraduate UND world-class level education in addition to that. So, we're building the framework because we know beyond visual line of sight is going to bring an explosion of value to the UAS industry and then vicariously to other industries as well. Line inspections, when you're talking about transmission line inspections and pipeline inspections, we've got the pilots that are going to be ready because they've got their private pilot's licenses to go out and inspect, hit the ground running when beyond visual line of sight permissions come out. But it's those assets, they themselves are lending themselves to essentially the requirement of beyond visual line of sight because they stretch across vast areas of geography. And luckily for us in North Dakota, what is also uncongested airspace. So beyond visual line of sight, it's a sure thing that at some point, someday it's going to come out. We don't know when, maybe a couple years or so, but we know that when it comes out, that it's going to be extremely beneficial for companies such as ours that have built that framework to really be able to take advantage of it when it's there. And that's one of our goals, is to really be a leading beyond visual line of sight operator. And, we've done some beyond visual line of sight work or extended visual line of sight work with the Northern Plains UAS test site, which is also here in Grand Forks, in conjunction with NASA during their UTM, or Unmanned Traffic Management Project, which garnered some pretty impressive national attention.
I know that the state of North Dakota and the Grand Forks area has some real strong advocates for the drone industry. It goes back to what you said earlier about North Dakota being one of the drone hubs in the country. Could you talk about the partnerships that are there?
I couldn't agree with you more that North Dakota, and specifically also in Grand Forks, is one of the few places where we have every piece of the puzzle in terms of UAS. We've got the flight operators, we've got the curriculum at the university, and we've got the subject matter experts, the economic development professionals, the pilots. There's so many unmanned aircraft just in this city alone, but, a test site. One of the best things, though, is an awesome, I would characterize, project called Grand Sky, which is at the Grand Forks Air Force Base here, just a stone's throw away from where our headquarters is. They're co-located with the Grand Forks Air Force Base on the alert pad. They fly Predators and Reapers with some of the various three-letter agencies The Air Force out there has a Global Hawk mission. But Grand Sky, in partnership with the test site, this is one of the best examples of the partnership here. They were the first people flying the MQ-1 for research purposes to fly beyond visual line of sight in a true sense. And it's because of the legwork of our test site and the partnership, Grand Sky, and the uncongested airspace and the airworthiness of the MQ-1. So you've got that perfect storm of capabilities that turn into serious success